All righty, well, we are live. Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. I'm Dame Lillian Walker, and this is
Carol
Carol,
Moulton.
Carol Moulton from Yelm, Washington. So we are here. We are talking about continuing our discussion about the Mitochondriac Manifesto, the read, review, and apply about this awesome content, which is based on the work of Dr. Jack Kruse. So we're going to be on page 20, and now we are talking about ideal health depends on our ability to use light. So let's see what he says in this section. It says, light is the alpha and the omega of terrestrial biology. The beginning and the end, of course. Light slows down and forms all matter in the universe via Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. So I'm going to share that with you guys here so that you can see it with your own two eyes, because I think this is so important. Jack talks about this. It says light slows down and forms all matter in the universe via Einstein's equation of E, energy, equals matter, capacity, and then, of course, to the second degree. And it says light combines with carbon dioxide and water to lay the foundation for the entire food chain via photosynthesis. So what does he mean here? I want to kind of break this down, because sometimes we hear, it's kind of like, there are certain foods, we all know what chicken tastes like, right? And if you compare turkey to chicken, turkey kind of tastes like chicken, right? And if you taste rabbit, it kind of tastes like chicken. And there are a lot of things that you taste them and they taste similar to chicken. Well, sometimes we have certain terms that we hear, and because we're not really familiar with specifics, we just hear chicken. It's kind of like it just glosses over and we don't really understand, so that we can ascribe a meaning and wrap our brains around really what does this mean. Because here it's saying that light slows down and forms all matter in the universe. And basically Einstein discovered E equals mc squared. Well, that's because energy coming from the sun, that's from the sunlight, it comes down at 8 point something seconds, I think it takes like 8 minutes and change for it to get from like the first ray of the sun to like actually comes down and hits your skin here on Earth. And it has to touch your skin, and it also has to go through the it's a circadian rhythm clock oscillator, which is what your eyes are. Your eyes are a circadian rhythm clock oscillator. It's a clock that oscillates. That means that it gyrates, it turns around and it spins in circles. And as it receives the rays of light, whether it's from early in the morning, midday, late day, as it goes in through your eye, and it also goes through the sclera. Some people think that it's just through the pupil of the eye or possibly through the iris of the eye, which is the colored part, but also the white part of your eye also receives and transmits the rays of light. And then as it goes in through your iris, it hits, of course, the optic nerve, of which the optic nerve is upside down. That's what slows down the bandwidth, that ray of light. And because it slows down that ray of light, it can turn that light. When you slow down light, it turns things into matter, into particles of something. If you're looking at that light first thing in the morning, after sunrise, before 10 o'clock in the morning, you're going to get UVA rays of light and UVB rays of light, which are going to turn into vitamin A, which turns into a hormone in the body. It's going to turn into vitamin D, which also becomes another hormone in the body. Those are particles of vitamin A and vitamin D that just seconds ago were just wavelengths of light, of color, sound frequency, because it's all kind of, we don't hear the rays of the sun, but we've heard people measure the human resonance, right? 7.83 hertz. There's a sound to that frequency. There's a sound and there's a color associated with that. So that's what he's talking about. And that's what Einstein was trying to explain in his formula, E equals mc squared. And now you go to light combines with carbon dioxide and water to lay the foundation for the entire food chain via photosynthesis. Fascinating. So, but as influential as those fundamental or those foundational phenomena are, you can't fully appreciate light's importance to multicelled organisms until you understand what light does after it enters your body. You see, a healthy body is good. A healthy body is good at capturing light, storing it, transforming it, using it, and reabsorbing it, including these processes. 1, photoreceptors in the eye, skin, gut, and lung capture light information. These opsins, as the light-sensitive biochemicals are called, are sensor switches that activate our internal pharmacy to make the hormones and neurotransmitters that control our metabolism, our sleep/wake cycles, and regeneration. You should care about that because regeneration, cellular regeneration, right? So cells in our body store light. Stop here. Cells in our body store light. So that means that as you're out in the sun, as Carol is outside, she was just minutes ago out in the garden, right? Out in the forest. I'm out across the street, at the beach or walking on the grass here in my neighborhood. Our body is receiving through the eyes, through the skin, through our hair, believe it or not. Our hair, believe it or not, they act like antenna. The longer your hair, the longer those antennae are, the more intuitive you are. There's research studies to show this. I'm not joking. In fact, the military discovered this over 50 years ago. I'll never forget the first time I read that. I thought, what? I thought that was like, wow. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, but it is talking about how the cells in our bodies store light when water in and around them is exposed to mostly infrared light and visible light. 42% of the sun is infrared light, and we are infrared light beings. So it's talking about how we have photoreceptors in our hair, our skin, our eyes, right? And now that is light turns regular water into a charge separated E-zone, energy zone. That's what an E-zone is. DHA converts light into a DC electricity. That's a DC electric current. Listen to that again. DHA, that's a substance that we find in the body, not to be confused with DHEA, the fountain of youth hormone. But DHA converts light into a DC electric current, into electricity, and then back. The respiratory proteins, the proteins that breathe, and proteins are simply chains of peptides, long chains of peptides, right? Polypeptides they're called. On the inner mitochondrial membrane, take light of one frequency and convert it into another. Easiest way to think of, the reason why frequencies are called frequencies is because when you measure them, the frequency with which a wave over time is measured is there's a certain number of up waves, down waves, and straight where there's no change going up or down. It's measured in milliseconds, right? And so the frequency, how often it goes up or down, that change takes place up or down, or flatline, you're dead. The only thing that's flatline, that means that there's no life. But as long as it's oscillating, it's moving, it's changing up or down, it has some sort of that frequency. The tighter the frequencies, that means that there's a lot of change very quickly, as opposed to a long wave of change or
Right.
frequency. So just so that people start to, so you don't hear chicken, I want you to understand why it's called a frequency, and to those waves, there is, even though you might not hear it with the natural ear, but there are devices that can pick up the sound frequencies. There's sound and there's color frequencies that are associated with light, with color. And it says here, and convert them into another. So for instance, mitochondria take light home on electrons and release it as infrared to heat and shrink water around respiratory proteins. So it's saying that inside each cell, you have these little devices called mitochondria, and it receives, so you're receiving light, from your skin as an example, and it goes then into the cells, inside your skin, into your organs. Inside the cell, that mitochondria is going to take the light, and then it's going to, it says, light born on electrons, because your electrons are light too. So think about that. It's like light hitting light. What do you think happens when light hits other light, like a tiny packet of light coming from a large? Obviously, it's going to multiply it. It's going to grow. It's going to expand. It can't just be neutral. It's not like it's going to flatline or nothing unless the electrons are dead. If the body is dead, then light goes through the body and, it's not going to multiply because that organism, which is, in this case, we're talking about a human, it's not alive anymore. But as long as it's alive, it's going to expand growth. It's going to multiply. And it talks here how that it releases as infrared light to heat as it heats it up, because it is electricity. It's light. That's going to shrink the water inside the cell around the respiratory proteins, increasing their efficiency. So it's heating up energy so that the energy moves faster, and that's going to increase the efficiency of that particular cell, which is going to affect the entire organ, the entire organism, right? So in contrast, it says here, in contrast, bacteria and archaea have a completely different relationship to light than we do. So they're not designed to harvest light like we do. Having developed along a different evolutionary track, single-celled organisms called prokaryotes don't have any DHA in their cell membranes. That means they can't turn on the sun's energy into DC electricity. They can't store light as fat. As humans, we can store light as fat. In fact, no pun intended, I didn't mean to say in fat. I meant to say in fact. However, in fat, there is a lot more light than there is less light. So you'll see that people that are overweight emit a lot more light than people who are more balanced in their weight. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, because that's something that Dr. Jack talks at length about. And they don't, it says here, so they can't store light as fat. That's what the prokaryotes, single cell organism. And they don't have respiratory complexes to transform one wavelength of photonic energy into another. So it can be used for other purposes. In our body, we can do that. It says all of which means bacteria can't build complexity, and they have to stay single. That means monocelled their entire lives. In fact, bacteria and light don't always get along. Did you hear that? Bacteria and light don't always get along. I knock out bacteria every day. Every day that I scan someone, we knock out all these parasites, all these viruses, all these germs, fungus and mold. I had somebody today. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited every time I scan someone, especially people who are on the patches, because the body is already at 33% additional cellular activation. And they're already used to the frequencies from being on the patches. Now you send them a frequency. And I had this one gal, all this bacteria, all this, 100% of the fungus, 100% of the mold completely knocked out. When I first scanned her, she had a significant, and she had just been to the doctor. The doctor says, "Whoa, you have a lot of viruses. You have a lot of active viruses, not to be confused with dormant viruses."
Wow.
Bam, we knocked them all out. the frequencies that I send you during these AO scans, during these full scans, those are light and sound frequencies. They're actually one and the same, but we as humans, because we have the sense of eyesight, we have the sense of hearing, we separate the two, but they're really one and the same. You can't really, in the physical world, it can't be separated. These lights that you see here, it inherently has color. And if I had the appropriate device, I could measure the sound wave that this color emits, as opposed to those infrared light bulbs, which I have above here. Very cool.
Yeah,
So
fascinating.
it is really
Very
fascinating.
fascinating.
We start to understand that, we're like, okay, so, and it says here, as I was saying, and they have to stay single monocelled their entire lives. In fact, bacteria and light don't always get along. No, they don't like light very much.
They don't like each other.
Light in the UV range can actually kill them. Yep. So to their detriment, they release almost all the light they absorb not long after collecting it. They can't store it. That's right, bacteria cannot store light. So it says here, a leakage of light causes disease. So if you're leaking light, if you're not, think of it as digestion. If you're not properly digesting your food, you don't get the nutritional benefit of the food, right?
Right.
You'll go through the motions, you'll pee certain things out, you'll poop certain things out, and even though you might be eating all the right foods, you go get a blood test and it says you're deficient in vitamin A, E, D, K, and you're like, but I eat a bowl full of spinach with carrots and red bell peppers and yellow bell peppers and this, that, and whatnot. How is that possible? And I eat liver twice a month. How can I be low in iron? Well, if you're not digesting properly, if you have something that is off balance, then you could eat a perfect diet, but your body's not able to make use of it. So you're the filter that it passes through. So you have to identify what is it that you need to change so that you can start to benefit from everything that you are feeding into your body. And the same thing is with light. So a leakage of light causes disease. So in the animal kingdom, organs and whole organisms become dysfunctional when they're not good at retaining light. So someone who is not overweight or underweight, we're good at retaining light, which is, that means that we're in homeostasis. We're operating properly. All systems, it's kind of like, think about your car. If you have good, if you've got a good filter, you have proper oil, you have good gas in your car, you don't hear knocks and pings in your car.
Yep.
No, because everything is in order. But if you've gone 10,000 miles, 15,000 miles, and you haven't done oil, lube, and filter, you haven't put new oil, that oil is probably getting pretty gritty and grimy. It's probably getting pretty dark and pretty thick. The filter, which is the equivalent of your kidney and your liver, your filter is probably pretty full. You know, people who are having issues with kidney stones, that's like a filter in your car that's too full. It's like you go to put, you can put new oil, but if you didn't switch out the filter, how effective is that filter going to be to filter whatever new oil you have? Well, not very good. And so the same thing is true with the body. So just something to think about, start to put things in perspective so you can start to take better care of yourself. So it says here, this happens when they lose too much light to their environment, when they should be holding on to it and using it to do cellular work. So it says, key concept, when a cell is stressed, it emits minute amounts of extremely low frequency UV light. And then it says here that some people call biophotons. That means biological light, biophotons. The more stress a cell is under, the more ELF UV light is released, whether that stress is from physical injury, toxin damage, nutritional deficiency, infection, environmental extremes, emotional duress, crying, orgasms, or exertion. All of those affect light. However, this type of emission isn't inherently unusual or harmful. Instead, abnormally rapid loss and or slow replenishment is what creates problems. In other words, every life form on the planet, onions, grasses, monkeys, bacteria, you name it, release a certain amount of biophotons, part of the natural process, right? The more light an organism can retain and use, you're not leaking light, the more complexity it can build. That means the more light you can retain and you can make use of, because light is nutrition. It's packets of information and it's nourishment. So the more you can retain it, the more efficient. But if you're receiving it and you can't hold on to it, and it's kind of like having a leak in your gas tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, it's horrific to think. You're like, wait a minute, I'm paying $5-6 a gallon.
Yeah.
That's like you're spending $150 a person in groceries a week.
Yeah.
And you're only retaining 75 of the 150 you're spending. Can you imagine if you spent $150 worth of gas a week and you only got to use 75 because you have a little hole in your gas tank, and so 50% of it before you get a chance to use it just leaks out? That's exactly what's happening to a lot of us in the human body. That's like, no bueno.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the more light an organism, you're an organism, I'm an organism, we're all a collective of 56 trillion cells, which are organisms, not to mention germs, viruses, bacteria, and all sorts of other things that live in us, like parasites, which we try to evict as often as possible. But, oh, I lost my spot here. So the more light an organism can retain and use, the more complexity it can build, the more efficient. And the more vitality it has, the more energy it has, the more life. Vitality is life. So a hallmark of good health is the efficiency with which your body is able to harvest light from the environment, convert it into different frequencies of light, and store it for future use. It's in the simplest terms, light is the currency of life. I love that sentence. In the simplest terms, light is the currency like dollars, is the currency of life. To illustrate this in action, when the sun makes a photon, that's a little packet of light, photo is just light, that photon is retained for 100,000 to 1,000,000 years before it's emitted an array of light. Oh, I didn't know that.
No.
Wow. So when the sun makes a photon, that photon is retained for 100,000 to 1,000,000 years before it's emitted as a ray of light. The physical forces that contain that photon are strong electric and magnetic fields. Interestingly, the same thing happens in us. Some electric and magnetic fields around our mitochondria help us retain our photons so we can put them to good use. Conversely, illness and obesity are unhappy consequences of a loss of light due to a weak electric and magnetic fields made in the mitochondria. So it's saying here that when you are overweight, your mitochondria is weak, which is why you have the presentation of being overweight. So one way we lose light, the double helix of the DNA needs to unwind to let cellular machinery read the instructional code to make the proteins. So I want you guys to think of, because our DNA, it's like a ladder that spirals.
Yeah.
And actually, I think as children, we all played with gyroscopes, right?
Yes.
So gyroscopes, you notice that you have the outer part of it, but inside you have a rotating, and it's kind of like perpetual figure 8. And it's not like it's a top that's spinning like this. It's like the outer side, but the inside, it's kind of moving in a figure 8, and it continues. And the more energy literally you put into it, the longer it'll keep on spinning and spinning and spinning.
Yeah.
And that's what our DNA is like. Our entire insides of our body, although we cannot see it, right? From our DNA to our blood, to our cerebral spinal fluid, to every single electron inside every single cell, it's all like these figure eights. It's like these vortexes, these vortices, plural for vortexes, vortices, all these little like toroidal fields of energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That as long as we're alive, they're still moving. And to the degree that you hydrate and you drink the proper amount of water and you're not dehydrated, everything is fine and happy. You start to get 2% dehydrated. I already told you guys, proteins start to fold. Your brain and other things in the body starts to shrink. Like I said, proteins shrink, they fold in half. Your brain starts to shrink because your brain loves water. It's over 70% water. Average human being is about 70% water. I've talked about babies are about 82% water. Those who are 60 plus are about 55% water. Our DNA is 92% water. You get dehydrated, you start to put a compromise on the DNA. That's where things start to break down. You don't want that. You want to make sure you're drinking water. It's like rain. You want to be putting rain in your body from the time you get up until you put your head on a pillow, you go to sleep all day long because you want to keep it balanced. You don't want to flood it in the morning, starve it in the afternoon and the evening, and only give it water in the morning. No, 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 no. You want it to be consistent throughout the entire day, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So in simplest forms, light is the currency of life. I love that. I'm going to highlight that because I think that's a great. And currency, think about it. Money is stored energy.
Yeah.
That's what, and we've
Yeah.
agreed that, there are certain things that a dollar will buy and X amount of dollars will buy X amount of things. It's stored energy. You spent energy earning that dollar, you save it, and now you spend it or you invest it and multiply it. You can invest your money and have your money make babies, and because it gets a return on whatever it is that you've invested in.
Exactly. Yeah.
To illustrate this in action, when the sun makes a photon, a little packet of light, that photon is retained for 100,000 to 1,000,000 years before it's emitted as a ray of light. The physical forces that contain that photon are strong electric and magnetic fields. Interesting, the same thing happens in us, which is what I just talked about. Strong electric and magnetic fields around our mitochondria help us retain our photons, so we can put them to good use. Conversely, illness and obesity are unhappy consequences of a loss of light. Consequences of a loss of light due to a weak electric and magnetic fields made in the mitochondria. Mitochondria is our little storage factory that processes the energy of the body. One way we lose light, the double helix of DNA needs to unwind to let cellular machinery read the instructional code to make proteins. The strength with which photons are held in place when your DNA unravels determines how many of them escape in this process. Whatever the reason may be for the weak electric and magnetic fields, whether that's worn out mitochondria, which is possible, chronic hypoxia means not enough oxygen. And people who shallow breathe are hypoxic. And if you're hypoxic, that means you're not getting enough oxygen, then you're going to have circulatory problems. It could be microcirculatory, or it could be macro, big circulatory or small circulatory problems. Circulatory problems, nonetheless. And it says here, or lack of DHA. Light can't be held in place, so it escapes as extremely low frequency ultraviolet or infrared, and infrared is always light emitting heat, and other forms of light. The informational aspect of light also gets mismanaged when light is squandered, which means the body isn't able to read the information contained in the electrons about the seasonality. That's when you're eating food and you're not getting the nutritional benefit because you got a leak in your gas tank.
Right.
And then the thing is, overweight, underweight. When I was underweight, there was a leak in my gas tank. And I had a doozy of a time trying to fix it so that all this increased food, all this extra calories, all these extra proteins that I was spending so much time and extra effort eating extra stuff in order to put on weight. And the hole in my tank was so big that I gained 0 pounds after all that concerted effort and work, which is as demoralizing as it is for someone who is overweight by any amount, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 pounds.
Yeah.
How frustrating to curb your calories, to eat less, to do more exercise, to be on purpose doing an action expecting to lose anything, even a half a pound, and then to not lose it. It's infuriating. It's depressing. Because you got to change something, and you thought that that change would make the effect, but there's a light story that most of us don't take into account. And that's what this is bringing to your attention. So this messes up the way the whole body metabolizes food. Oh boy, we've talked about LED lights and how it totally breaks your DHEA, fountain of youth hormone, increases insulin resistance. Oh my gosh, increases insulin resistance. That means your blood sugar, your glucose is going to go, hello. And then on top of that, you're going to have all this crazy inflammation in your body just from LED lights. Well, so once we lose light, the double helix of the DNA needs to unwind to let the cellular machinery read the instructional code to make the proteins. The strength with which the photons are held in place when your DNA unravels determines how many of them escape in the process. Whatever the reasons may be for these weak electric and magnetic fields, whether they're worn out mitochondria, chronic hypoxia, lack of oxygen, or lack of DHA, light can't be held in place, so it escapes as an extremely low frequency UV, infrared, heat, and other forms of light. So the informational aspect of light also gets mismanaged when light is squandered, which means the body isn't able to read the information contained in electrons about seasonality. Seasonality is important. That's why the earth has winter, spring, summer and fall, right? This messes up the way the body metabolizes food, which can make vegetables and fruit raised in strong sunlight, oh my gosh, fattening and damaging to mitochondria when eaten under weak sunlight. Oh my gosh, for people who have weight issues, you got to hear that, especially if you're trying to lose weight. So I'm going to read this again. The informational aspect of light also gets mismanaged when light is squandered, which means the body isn't able to read the information contained in the electrons about seasonality, the time of year that you're eating whatever it is that you're putting in your mouth, whatever fruits or vegetables. This messes up the way the body metabolizes, breaks down, digests the food, which can make vegetables and fruits raised in strong sunlight. So for example, we're getting pineapples from Hawaii as an example. And if you're living in Washington like you are, or you're living in Chicago, or you're living in New York, you're living in Canada, there's weaker sunlight there, but you're getting this pineapple. It's coming from a place where it's like 85 to 90 degrees right now. And now you're eating that. Guess what? It's telling you here, vegetables and fruits raised in strong sunlight, fattening and damaging to mitochondria when eaten under weak sunlight, because you're in weak sunlight now, not in strong sunlight. So more on food and seasonal eating in chapter 14. Now the true story of light and why everybody should give a care about your light environment, because it does matter. So when, where, and how will an individual be affected by a leakage of light? Well, it seems like any day that ends in DAY. Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Every day.
all the days. It all depends on which mitochondria are weakest, as that will be the area of the body you'll find the lowest electric and magnetic fields. For instance, people with anorexia leak, oh my gosh, I did not know this. They leak light from the brain, while obese people lose light predominantly from the body. That I did know. I did not know that anorexic lose it from the brain. But that's makes total sense now that I think about it, because if you're anorexic, you have very little muscle and you have no fat. The only fat left in your body is in your brain, because your brain is primarily made up of fat. So that's why you release it through the brain and not through the rest of the body. You don't have it to release from the body. Wow. Especially the liver and pancreas. Ooh. In time, Dr. Jack Kruse believes research will prove each disease has its own distinct light loss signature. But whatever science ultimately finds, the rule is simple. The more light you release, the sicker you are. The more light you retain, the healthier you are. That's how loss of light connects to disease. There you have it, my friends and gems. We are up to now. The next section that we will read when we come back is going to be electrons are the currency of life. Get it? Because electrons are just light.
Yeah.
Now it's starting to become aware. People are starting to realize and recognize, wait a minute, photons, it's light. There's light. There's photons. There's electrons. There's electrolytes. Even Hertz frequency is a light bandwidth. So, oh, wait a minute. These are all names for light, and it's really all the same thing. And they're all packets of information that we take in unconsciously and that we actually digest and process to live.
Oh, excellent. I really enjoyed it. Excellent information.
So we are slowly making our way, savoring this very delicious book. So, oh my gosh, it's exactly 8 o'clock on the nose. All right, my friends and gems, I hope you guys are enjoying this read, review, and apply of the Mitochondriac Manifesto. If you haven't got the book yet, I have no financial gain or interest in this. Still trying to get a hold of R.D. Lee so that I can invite him to be on here so that he can help unravel more of the mysteries that are being shared in this incredible book, with tons of fantastic content and information that more and more of us need to become aware of. And for those of us who have kids, for those of you who are raising kids, we need to be equipped to understand it ourselves so that we can start to language it and we can start to share that with our kids, make kids mindful about when they put blueberries in their mouth, when they put pineapples in their mouth, when they put asparagus from their mouth. You want to go to the farmer's market where you live and eat the produce that's available, not brought in from, not that we don't want to support other countries. This is not a political, even capitalistic thing. No, this is about your health and your well-being. You need to grow where you are planted.
That's right.
You want to eat in congruence, in harmony with the environment in which you're living, because that is the light spectrum that you are experiencing, whether you're conscious or not conscious of it. So you want to eat, if you have bananas in your environment, if you have asparagus, if you have spinach, if you have whatever the kind of lettuce, whatever produce it is that you have in your local farmer's market, that's what you want to go and get, because that is in harmonic frequency and is going to help you prime and optimize your body. And then, of course, eating from cattle that are locally grown as opposed to imported in from another state or from another country, or
Right.
same thing. You want to keep it as local as possible. So that's because those things are affected by light, and you are eating that food, whether it's produce, whether it's salmon, or whether it's bison or beef or goat or whatever, pork. That's in that same environment. That is a light barcode that you are eating, breaking down into the body and breaking it down into electrons and electrolytes, literally, not metaphoric. It's quite literal. That's what this entire thing is about, and how that is reacting with your continual receipt of light that's touching your every square inch of your skin, your hair, your eyes, not just through the pupils of your eyes. Make no mistakes, you're getting it through the colored part of your eyes, the iris, and even blind people who can't see through their eyes, they're still getting the benefit
Yes.
from the sclera, from the white part of their eyes. Make no mistakes. So,
Fabulous.
okay, my
Great.
friends, any questions, any comments, Carol?
No, this is wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing this. And I'm learning every minute.
We're all learning. I didn't know about the 100,000 to 1,000,000 years that when the sun creates a photon, that's a long time before it becomes a sun ray that then
Yeah.
comes to us. So,
Incredible.
yeah, and I heard from a physicist earlier today, he was talking about how our Earth is moving away, not just our Earth, but all the planets in the planetary system. We're all moving about half an inch away from the sun every year. And it's going to take can't remember the figure, it's like a huge number, trillions of years for us to be significantly away. And so I thought to myself, I got to reach out to that physicist. I need to ask, have they calculated to see, because the sun is changing too. So if we're moving half an inch away every year, suggesting, if you're thinking linearly, that would suggest that it's going to get colder every year, right?
Right.
Because you're farther away. However, that's assuming that the sun is not growing and expanding and becoming larger itself. So by how much is the sun increasing and growing? Because it doesn't look to me like it's shrinking.
That's right.
So, and everything in the universe, it's not about subtraction, it's about multiplication and multiplying and growing and expanding. So I'm kind of curious as this kind of unfolds, I'm like, okay, so we got partial information about the half inch that all the planets are moving away from the sun. Okay, well, let's look at, that's just one little piece of information. I'm not going to freak out over that. And trillions of years from now, I won't be here in this body, right? I might be here in a different body, but I'm not here. So nothing to worry about. But what are some of the other, because there's, again, we're assuming that the sun isn't growing. It's a star like all the other stars. A lot of those stars are growing.
Yeah.
And heard about supernovas and all that. So something to think about.
Oh, definitely. Some more things to think about. Fun.
All
Great
right.
fun.
Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you guys enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend. I sure did. And stay tuned. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., we'll be back here to do an information question and answer session. If you're interested in learning more about cellular activation of the body, then I would invite you to join us on Zoom.us, meeting ID, quick, get a piece of paper, write it down, 714-794-5626. You can always check in the description below. I'll put the meeting ID in there. You can just go to zoom.us. Then at 2 p.m. Pacific time, you can join us, or you can join us at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And as always, ciao for now, my friends and gems.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.